The Senate passed legislation this week that's going to repeal protections that had been put in place with the Dodd-Frank Act. This move is going to leave us vulnerable. Even more criminal activity is going to take place with America's biggest bank. Now, Peter, this is right up your alley.
Right.
After the first theft by the big banks, they stole gazillions of dollars from the American public. You brought lawsuits against some of those thieves. You brought hundreds of lawsuits against those thieves. Shearson Lehman, they escaped totally, right? Shearson Lehman, you know, if you lost $100,000 because of Shearson Lehman fraud, you maybe got back $15,000.
Right.
That was kind of the ratio. And then taxpayers came in and they gave relief, bailed out these other organizations. So talk about this a little bit. We got Congress saying, you know, we need to do this again. That's basically what this is inviting. Let's do this again.
I mean, to really kind of frame this up, the Dodd-Frank Act came out right after the huge market meltdown in 2007 and 2008. And that market meltdown was built on Wall Street greed, essentially taking risk that benefited CEOs, senior management, but that risk was shoved on to shareholders and ultimately American taxpayer. So right after that decline, Congress, the Obama administration put in all kinds of safeguards that said kind of too big to fail. So there were all these tests, and let's use one because it's kind of an easy one. Stress tests. Stress tests are the banks run and they say, I'll tell you what, we're going to run this stress. What happens if the economy collapses? What happens if, you know, inflation, the dollar, it comes in and it tests and stresses the banks and says, where are your weak spots? It's costly. It takes some time, but it's very, very. It protects the American consumer and makes sure that the banks aren't taking too much risks. Well, Wall Street's done a phenomenal job. The banks have done a great job. Employed, you know, thousands of lobbyists, spent hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying. So Dodd-Frank never really gets implemented. Just small bits and pieces of it. So now fast forward all the way to the new proposed bill.
Back up just a second. People don't even realize it. They think Dodd-Frank is out there, but no, Wall Street has they've stopped it at every turn.
Oh, yeah.
Every turn. So we don't even have the full benefit of Dodd-Frank.
Not even a fraction of it. I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds of proposals. A small, tiny amount of them were passed, mostly because Wall Street beat them back through lobbying.
Okay, so this is one proposal.
And so the argument, though, what always drives me nuts, the argument is, oh, these are too costly. These are too expensive. They're too time-consuming. It slows down growth. It impedes lending. It restricts capital. But at the same time, I mean, how many trillions of dollars were caused by Wall Street's greed in the 07 and 08 collapse? So now what they've done is that Senator Mike, is it Crapo? Yeah. I always forget how to pronounce his name. Maybe Crapo might be a little better.
Pretty appropriate.
He's the chairman of the Senate Committee of Banking, and they're pushing this back. And effectively, it looks like they got enough votes. They need 60 votes,
what
and they're
about
pushing
this,
some
Peter?
of this back.
What about this? Now, look, the thing that you've talked about so much when you bring these lawsuits and your pleadings, you talk about wild risks.
Right.
You talk about the idea that these banks understood the wild risk that was involved. But the risk, taking those wild risks, put so much money in their pocket, and at the end of the day, after they lost all the money, sheer incompetence and greed. There's no other reason. They were incompetent fools along with being greedy fools. So after they lose this money, the taxpayers come in, they bail them out, and they get to keep all the money they made. The CEOs keep every little dime. There's a second part to this that really bothers me. Now, you talked about there needed to be, under Dodd-Frank, this small part of Dodd-Frank, the stress test.
Right.
Let's take a look and see if you can withstand a problem. Okay, but the second part is, how about telling us what you're going to do when you fail? This idea of sell-off and liquidation. Mm-hmm. There was some protection there too, wasn't there?
Absolutely. And essentially what they've done is they've turned this around, the lack of transparency, the lack of any reporting, and what they've done is in the definition of what is too big to fail. So at one point it was $50 billion or more,
right.
And now they've shrunk that number down.
Well, what it was is we wanted to look, if you are a bank and you had $50 million,
right?
billion dollars, then you're gonna fall within this
test.
You
got to run these stress
They
tests.
want to raise it to $250 billion.
Right.
So in other words, all the real crooks, the people that we bailed out, if you look at this,
Oh,
the
the
real
list.
crooks, whether it's BB&T, SunTrust, American Express, those people
Countrywide.
Countrywide.
Countrywide's the one that bothers me the most because they're the ones that caused a ton of this
Okay.
lending. Was the first one to decline.
And if this passes, they get a free ride
Yeah.
because they say, hey, we're not a $250 billion operation. But if you look at the money they lost, it was massive. And taxpayers came back and
I mean,
paid them
think
back.
about some of the banks that went under. I mean, it's you've got to be kidding me. We can't run stress tests. We're going to decrease the transparency, all to increase the flow of capital. And I mean, a couple words come to mind: short-term memory. I mean, we're really going to take away these protections.
Well, let me just tell you something. You talk about this being Crapo
Right.
that went forward with this as Republican. There were 13 Democrats in the Senate.
Oh, that's
13
evenly
Democrats.
Split. That's
Yeah.
co-sponsored.
13 Democrats. They're co-sponsored by
You know
Democrats.
what that is. That's the lobbying money and the political contributions.
Well, it's the Wall Street Democrats
Absolutely.
that we talk about so often. You know, people, oh, Democrat is Democrat. No, Democrat is not Democrat. These are the same creeps. These are the Cory Booker types.
Right.
You know, wanted to bail out the pharmacy and the pharmaceutical industry. Cory Booker is kind of exhibit A of this type of politics.
Right.
But I mean, if you really, let's call some names. I mean, Heidi Heidenkamp from North Dakota, Joe Donnelly from Indiana. I mean, these are people that they hold themselves out as being, yeah, we're one of you. We care about people issues. I got to tell you something. Some of these people, they want to be up front on social issues, gender, they're out front, race, they're out front on important issues. But where it comes to issues that put food on the table for people, they're gonna side with Wall Street every single time. This was just 13 in this particular one, but if you go back and you take a look at what's happened this year in similar kinds of legislation, these people calling themselves Democrats, and the public, who really doesn't even have a sense what a damn Democrat is anymore, just said, oh yeah, they're Democrat, they must be for us.
Before we move on in our story, the easy part of this to fix is to change the way that risk is shifted to the taxpayer. That's what you touched on earlier. If they just kept the risk borne within that senior management, the ones that pocket the money if it does well, but the stocks and the options, if we just took that away and kept the risk back at the corporate level, you'd see these problems melt away.
Yeah, well, that'll never happen, especially when Democrats are saying, yeah, we're all for Wall Street.